You were a girls' high school basketball coach prior to becoming this empire builder.
$100,000 for an hour? When I went and made more in 1 hour speaking to corporate America, that caused me to step back and go home that night and go, what skill do I have? And why would they pay me so much money for it?
With a storied history of cultivating top performers, Coach Burt is a renowned expert in the intricate art of packaging and monetizing purpose. His methodologies offer a proven blueprint for turning ideas into tangible success.
A lot of people are waiting on courage to come before they take an action, and they never do anything. I would have never built an $8 million building in downtown Nashville if I kept waiting on the courage to come. So the courage never comes first. Commitment to something comes first. The big table is the biggest opportunity available to you that you're not focused on. It's highly profitable, it's highly enjoyable, it's highly meaningful. It is literally the biggest game in business that you can play. And what we do when we get around powerful people, we kind of have a need to tell them how great we are. I remember when I was negotiating the deal with Tony Giarratana, who's the biggest developer in Nashville, and he's probably $1 billion guy. For some reason, I just had to tell him that I had an airplane. And I'm like, I got this jet. And then I felt so stupid. It just lowered my status, if anything. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Now tell me what the question is.
Thanks for watching this episode of The American Capitalist. I created this show to fulfill my mission. My mission is to change the lives of 1 million people through financial literacy and entrepreneurship. And that's why I bring guests on this show who have done that for themselves. They've done it for other people. That's why I'm sharing my 25 years of knowledge of taking myself out of poverty to becoming a multimillionaire, and more importantly, doing that for hundreds of other people. But in order to do that for millions, I need you guys to help me out. The price of this show for you, it's not actually free. To put on high quality content, to produce this, to get this out to you, it costs a lot of money to do that. And what I really want to do is do more of it. I want to get to more episodes. I want to get you higher quality content. I want to bring you more guests, more information. I want to continue to get better and better, but I can only do that with your support. The way you can do that, the dividend that you can pay, is hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button now, and please, another thing I'm going to ask you for, share this information so that someone else can change their lives, improve their business. This is information they still don't teach in school, but you're going to continue to get it here. But please hit the subscribe button. Enjoy the show. Coach Burt, welcome, man. Welcome to The American Capitalist. I was thinking about you coming on. I was talking to you a little bit earlier. The most exciting thing I think about this is you're going to be interview number 5, so it's a new podcast. Yep. I've had some great people on here. We've had Brad Lee, we've had Gunnar Peterson, we've had Charles Payne, we've had Michael Chandler. So you're in good company. But what I'm excited about you is you are a real coach. And one thing that I'm passionate about in terms of education and learning is frameworks. And I've known you for a while. I've read some of your books, and you've got tons and tons of frameworks that we can give to people today to take away and change their life. And what I'm also most excited about you, and we've known each other for a few years now, but I did a little bit more research on you before coming here, like a good podcast host should. Yeah. And I started learning a few things about your background and how you grew up. And it wasn't as easy as maybe what I thought it would be. Yeah. And I think probably the most exciting thing is you were a girls' high school basketball coach prior to becoming this empire builder, which I think, first of all, is a unique career. I want to know what made you think I want to be a girls' high school basketball coach when you grew up. You did that for about a decade, and you left, and you built this multi-million-dollar business and real estate empire, but we're going to get into. But let's maybe start there. Like, who is Micheal Burt? How did you grow up? Yeah. What made you want to be a high school basketball coach? Let's talk a little bit about that so the audience can understand who you are.
I grew up in a very, very small town called Woodbury, Tennessee. Okay. We're talking less than 2,500 people inside the city limits, so a lot of small town values. I was raised by a single mother. She had me when she was 16 years old, and she was just a tough-minded, disciplined person. So very early in my life, it's like we don't whine, we don't complain, we don't make excuses, right? And people hear me talk about that. My dad was not a bad guy. He didn't know how to be a good dad. And so they married, they got divorced within a year. So now my mom's just got me, and it was...
They got married as teenagers?
They got married as teenagers. Wow. He was 18, she was 16. They married for 1 year, I think primarily because maybe my dad was scared of my grandfather. but and then it was kind of me and mom, and my mom was just this very tough. We're going to make it happen. You can do anything with your life. Kind of instilled that me early in life. So I grew up on a baseball field.
Okay.
I grew up in gyms when my mom was working 2 jobs or 3 jobs trying to just make sure we had what we needed. And so I really saw at a very early age that a good coach could change a person's life. These coaches became like father figures to me. So they poured into me. They helped me. And so I was always watching the analytical side of coaching. I was observing. My Little League baseball coach at 6 years old said, "Son, you're going to be a great coach when you grow up."
I don't know if that's what you want to hear as an athlete. You're going to be a great coach.
It's like, and then my high school coach called me professor. My high school basketball coach. I was a much better baseball player than basketball player, but at 15 years old, I started coaching junior pro basketball because of a phone call one day. So, will you help me coach this team?
Okay.
The second I started coaching, I just fell in love with it. And I literally knew at 15, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Wow. Okay.
So that led to me coaching for 3 years while I was in high school. I went to college. I coached while I was in college.
Where'd you go to college?
Middle Tennessee State University, which is what a lot of people in my small town did. They went right to the local university. And but I was coaching, and I had a natural talent and an inclination to be really good at it. I love the psychology side of it. So at 18, I was coaching at elementary school. We won a state championship my first year at 18.
Wow.
We got back to the state championship game at 19. So while other people were partying in college, or I was coaching, I would literally go to my college classes. I always joke and say I took classes at 7 a.m. And it was me and my professor, right? There was nobody there except me and 5 people, so I could get back to coach. So by 11, I was done, man. I was back coaching. And lucky for me,
girls you
this was boys. I actually started with boys.
Okay.
And I started to have this awareness that I needed to broaden my resume. What if I coach girls in the summer? That way I could go either way. And I coached a girls team in the summer, throughout the summer. The players were great. They all came from Riverdale High School, which is a big high school in Murfreesboro. And that allowed the head coach there to see me. And he started observing, man, my players like playing for this guy. He's very disciplined. He shows up. He's only 19 years old, but he's like very good at what he does. So this guy said, "Will you come to Riverdale and be my assistant coach?" And I still remember, I'm like, "Well, how much are you going to, pay me to come there?" And he's like, $2,000. And I'm like, "I'm in."
Is $2,000 a month? Or
$2,000 a year.
Oh, yeah, okay. Big bucks.
So I went to the second largest high school in Tennessee. I was an assistant under this guy for 3 years. I very quickly kind of climbed the ladder to the number 1 assistant.
Okay.
And I graduated from Middle Tennessee State on a Saturday. They hired me the next Thursday to be the head coach.
Wow.
At 22.
At 20, okay.
So now I'm at the second largest high school in Tennessee, and I'm 22 years old. I'm the youngest head coach in the state of Tennessee, and that kind of put me on a fast track to doing what I did.
So it sounds like, you said from the time you were 15, you kind of knew you were going to be a coach. You're passionate about it. Everybody was telling you that. You get this opportunity. What was the end goal, though? Hey, I go to NCAA, I go to NBA. How are you looking at that?
Yeah, the end goal was always to win a championship. They had never won a championship there at this school. It was a football school.
Okay.
And people made fun of me. They laughed at me. I started talking about how we're going to win a championship at this school as a girls basketball program. And 30 years, no championships. So I'm really talking about things that people are looking at me like, who is this kid? And what does he know? And he's only 22 years old. And it was truly a dominant football school. They had won 4 state championships in football. They had a legend coaching in football. And it's like, who's this little dude who thinks he's going to do something? And so I really caught a lot of flack the first couple of years. But this is when I fell in love with Covey's work, right? From 18 to 24, I was deeply studying Dr. Stephen Covey and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Principles Centered Leadership.
Yeah, early on.
18, I got turned on to that. I didn't just read the books. I would spend 4 hours on a Sunday watching all the videos. This is back when it was VHSs.
Right. Yep.
And I acclimated myself with these 7 habits. So I taught every player the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Principles of Good to Great, the 5 Dysfunctions of Teams, the 5 Disciplines of a Learning Organization, which is Peter Senge. This was not like cotton candy psychology.
Yeah.
These were deep, methodical thinkers. And I would learn it, and I would teach my players. I would learn it, and I would teach my players. So I was really growing the whole person, the body, the mind, the heart, and the spirit. I was so far advanced than my peers that pretty soon people began to ask me, what are you doing with the players? It's crazy how hard they play for you, how disciplined they are, how loyal they are. And I said, well, I'm teaching the whole person theory, man, body, mind, heart, and spirit. And people thought I flew in from another planet because you don't see high school coaches talking like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this prompted me to write my first book at 25.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think there's, a lot of parents that are listening to this. There's people themselves in their early 18, 19, 20 that listen to this show. When you read all these things that you're talking about, that's pretty high level thought process. It's high level thinking. It's very strategic. How did you take that? This is something I'm always trying to break down to people in finance. How did you take that and simplify it and create a message for them that they can digest and actually perform on the court with?
Well, that's a great question, because they were 14 to 18-year-olds. Right. And, but the 7 habits are universal. Reading Covey's material was hard. It's very methodical. It's very deep. But I really mastered it. I went through certifications. I went through, it's not like I read the book.
Yeah.
I really mastered the content to where it became a fabric of who I was. And I said, no, as long as I'm coaching, I'm going to teach these 7 habits. Those kids today are 40 years old. They could tell you the 7 habits. I mean, they could. Yeah. Some of my former players are now in my coaching programs. I am their business coach.
Wow.
So in those days,
you've seen them actually take that into the business world.
I've seen them take it into the business, the foundational material. So my goal was to win a championship, and it was to go to college and be a major Division I coach. And that was the trajectory I was on, right? I was getting offers to go to colleges because college coaches would come watch my teams play, and they'd be like, we want you to come here. So, but when I wrote the first book, people asked me to speak, and I would go speak, and I'd be like, no, this is interesting. I'm using the same methodologies, packaged in my way, and I'm bringing it to Dell Computers and State Farm Insurance and National Healthcare. And that was when I started making more in an hour than I was making in a month. And that caused me to step back and think, right? And I had no financial education. Like a guy like you are, so far ahead because I had no financial IQ. I didn't know the difference between an asset and a liability.
Right.
I was making $25,000 to $55,000 a year.
Wow.
I loved it. But when I went and made more in 1 hour speaking to corporate America, that caused me to step back and go home that night and go, what skill do I have? And why would they pay me so much money for it? And I remember Googling coaches that speak. And it was Lou Holtz, University of Notre Dame. It was Mike Krzyzewski at Duke University. And it looked down in the corner, it said speaking fee. $100,000. And I went, what? $100,000 for an hour? And I go, and I remember speaking at a little banquet, Rob, and it was like kids and parents, and they paid me $250 that night. And a guy, a football coach, came to me at the end, and he goes, man, you're good enough to go on the circuit. And I go, what circuit? He said, you could go around the world and speak. You're that good. And I went home that night and go, what does that mean? I need to write books. I need to craft a message. I can go do this. So that really became a side hustle for me from 25 to 31.
You were still coaching during that time?
Still coaching.
Okay.
See, I wouldn't retire until I won a championship. That's what I set out to do. I thought I was going to go to University of Memphis and coach. I thought I was going to go to all these college coaches and coach, but I just said, man, I can't leave until I do this one thing, which is turn this into a powerhouse. That school would then go on to win 7 of 9 state championships. Okay, after I retired.
After a while.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I retired at 31.
Kind of like the Roger Bannister 2-minute mile thing, right? As soon as you showed that it could be done, they believed in it themselves.
And it set a foundation. You now went there with positive expectancy. See, before you went there because it's where you were zoned to go to school. You now went there because this is where great players go.
And the football team already had that.
They already had that. And then I helped turn it into a dynasty that would win 7 of 9 state championships in a 10-year cycle.
So, I mean, I think that's important. How did you take this mindset? Because this relates to business and everything. This is most people are thinking. I think this is why most people are stuck in jobs that are under $100,000 a year. They don't believe in themselves. They don't know how to get to that level. So in terms of transitioning that into people, so you got into this school that had a losing record. I'm sure they didn't feel too great about the team or their prospects for winning that year. You bring in all these sophisticated business types of strategies to deal with their mind. What were some of the other things so you get their mind right? I heard you talked about, and I'll be quite honest, we're about the same height. Basketball was really never in my futures. I'm much more like he's a baseball fan. But you talked about this, and conceptually I get it. This is, and I might screw it up, 2.5 seconds to get it to center court, which is offense. And I think that's a huge thing, this offense versus defense. So tell me about that, because I think that's important.
Well, you hear a lot of people say defense wins championships. I've heard that my whole life. And it's not true. right? You could hold people to less points, but you have to score points. You have to put points on the board. So I made up my mind as a coach, and this is still a business philosophy that I have today, that we're going to play offense. We're going to create. We're going to come at you so hard with such a frequency that it's just going to completely break your spirit. You're going to be like, I'm out. So I was the first coach to bring in strength and conditioning coach for women. In 1999, I brought in a full-time strength and conditioning coach for girls basketball.
Wow. Okay.
And it was tough.
Getting them to lift weights.
Yeah. Well, it was like, what do you want? I want them to be bigger and faster and stronger. And I said, but you got one job, to get these people tough enough to play for me. And he put them through stuff you could do in the late 90s.
Wow.
Boot camps. We did football drills, like bull in the ring. I mean, stuff you can't do today. Okay.
Yeah, they're not letting you do that. At school
like it was
rough.
Almost like military training.
Wow.
But when they came to me, my players were bigger, faster, stronger, mentally tougher. So you take my leadership ability, you take his mental toughness and physical toughness, you put those together, and I started building superior teams. Even when they were more talented than me. We would beat people that were twice as talented as us.
Wow.
Because of our chemistry. These are called intangibles. Okay, so when you think about it, we want to get the ball to the midline in 2.3 seconds. We want to play offense. We want to come at you so hard for 32 minutes that you cry uncle. It's like, I'm out.
To kind of put that in perspective, it's 2.3 seconds. What's the normal to get it to the midline?
I mean, most people walk it up. They throw the ball. The other team scores. They walk it up. It's a slow offense. They've got to set everything up. It allows the defense to go get set. I'm like,
You're
they
putting
score,
them on their heels.
boom, boom, boom. And I just direct attack people, meaning I would teach my guards to just attack the basket. And over a period of time, the other team would wear out physically, emotionally, mentally, and to where we would win. So we won about 74% of the time.
Wow.
And then I got in business, and I'm coaching banks. These are $2 billion banks, mortgage companies, real estate.
What was your first job while you were still working at the school? What was the first coaching opportunity?
First coaching opportunity was a $144,000 contract to coach
That's a pretty big contract, right? You're making $55,000 a year.
Okay. Yeah, $12,000 a month. I went home and told my mother. She didn't even believe me. She's like, it's got to be a scam. She's like, there's no way somebody's going to pay you $12,000 a month to coach.
So and that's the other thing, right? Is I think we're all battering our childhood, right? And these limiting beliefs. So your mom, I know you said she was tough, but you're saying she was telling you that was a scam when you first made $140,000.
She's like, I don't understand. And they only wanted me to coach 1 week a month. And but it was a husband and wife, owned 6 nursing homes in West Tennessee.
Okay.
They saw me speak, and they pulled me out, and they said, we want to hire you to be our coach. And I said, well, what does that look like? And they said, we're going to pay you $12,000 a month for a 1-year contract, and we want you to keep all of our people motivated. I had no idea what I was signing up for. This is not easy work, Rob. I'm going into nursing homes. I'm going into tough environments.
Who are the type of employees?
Just low skill leveled employees, people that are just making sure these elderly people, right? Then you had nurses, then you had administrators. But my mother was a nurse. But toward the end of her career, she began being more in administrative roles, like at these nursing homes. So I used to go visit her, and I would see, this is a tough gig, right? And so I would go into these nursing homes and try to keep them motivated. And now here's the first big business lesson I had. I only had one client. The one client's paying $12,000 a month. 3 months into the contract, she said, I got to meet with you. We got some tough news I got to give you. And I met the CEO at the Opryland Hotel, and she said, we've had some major tax implications, and we are not going to be able to pay you this contract.
You were still working at the school during this time?
I had retired.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So now
this is your first full-time job, 31?
31 years old.
Okay. So you'd left the school. You lost that, I guess, safety net, right, of 55.
Now I got no insurance. I got no clients. I got no money coming in. Because I'm thinking $12,000 is a lot of money, and I hadn't perfected my customer acquisition strategies. I didn't have a selling system yet. I didn't have all the sophisticated things I do today. So now I got no money coming in, and I'm like, what do I need to do? I need to get out and get in front of people. Okay, my best strategy is to showcase my talents in front of people. We call that activation. Speaking is the fastest way to do it. So I spoke at Rotary clubs, civic organizations, anywhere I could get in front of people. Now, when you go speak at a civic club, like a exchange club or whatever, there's typically 1 or 2, 3 business guys in there. And I spoke at a morning breakfast. One guy was the largest home builder in the state of Tennessee, independent home builder. He saw me speak and he said, come see me tomorrow. I went to his office. He said, I don't know what it is you've got, but we need some of it. We're in a national recession. This is '08. I can't sell a house.
It's a horrible time to be doing anything as an entrepreneur.
He's like, I was selling, 700 houses a year. We were selling 40 a week some weeks. We can't sell 4.
Yeah.
I need your help. So he said, how much is it going to cost me? I had no pricing structure. I go, $125,000. I had no idea what to say. I didn't know idea what I was signing up for.
12 grand a month?
Yeah. So it's like, here's what he said. I'll never forget it. He goes, let's round it to 120 and get started today. And I thought, well, man, I should ask for 250. Now I'm coaching largest home builder in the state of Tennessee. I'm working with a multi-millionaire. This guy made $55 million last year. It's worth $350 million. I'm around him every day. I'm trying to keep him motivated, but I'm learning, how does he do big real estate deals? Where does he get this courage to do this? I'm coaching real estate agents that hated me. They didn't want a guy like me coming in there because I was going to expose what they were doing. They weren't working. They didn't prospect. They didn't follow up. I'm coaching superintendents of job sites. I'm coaching everybody in the company, which turned around and landed me the largest independent home builder in North Carolina.
Wow. Okay.
And I asked him for 250 versus 120. So I'm getting better. But listen, I'm coaching 2 business titans, really. These are guys today, they're worth $300 to $500 million. They were in their prime. And I'm watching and observing, this is what they do, this is how they do it, this is how they have integration, this is how they own these 5 different companies that are tied to this, this is how they make money. It's really a great business lesson. And now I've got a small boutique consulting firm that relatively quickly is doing almost 500 grand by the time I added a bank. So in my first year to 2 years, man, I got my little business doing 500 grand a year.
And I'm assuming you have pretty good margins. You're probably doing most of it yourself.
I got one assistant.
Yeah.
I got no overhead. I got the one guy gave me office space. He said, if you'll just bring your energy. As an older guy, he said, I got a whole wing of office space. If you'll bring your energy to my office, I'll give you the space for free.
Wow.
Now I got a whole office suite for free. I got no rent. I got one little assistant.
So you're making about 400 grand a year at this point, and this is what, 3 years roughly after you left, making 55,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think this is a point I want to just pause and stop on, because I think a lot of people, they get into that comfort mentality, 55,000, 60,000. They build a lifestyle around that. We've kind of been trained that's kind of what you do. You try to advance, and maybe when they're in their late 40s, early 50s, they kind of cap out at that $100,000 a year. What was now? You kind of got this unsolicited offer to go and make this $12,000 a month. So you said that was one thing that popped in your mind. If that hadn't have happened, though, to me it seems like, I guess it's tough. I'm a little bit skewed because I see you now today. Yeah. But do you think that would have happened anyway? Were you on the path to kind of understanding, realizing I got to get out of this? This is just a stepping ladder to get to the next thing, and really what I'm getting to for the individual person right now who's stuck on that path. What, to quote your book, what switch needs to be flipped for them to get out of that rut and get on a different trajectory? Well,
I felt like and I wrote a book on this called 8-Figure Skills Stuck in 6-Figure Vehicles. And I was a 5-figure vehicle I was in. I felt like a level 10 person stuck in a level 4 vehicle.
Why did you feel that way?
Just, I was advancing. I was growing. I was constantly studying personal development. I was going to conferences. And then I was going back, and there was all this low energy, and I'm like, I'm over this, man. A lot of people were shocked that I retired at 31 years old. I was at the peak. I was going to keep winning championships. But I go, I've done that. That's good.
Yeah.
What's next? I'd already written 4 books at that time. I was already speaking. I was being exposed to bigger think. I was kind of traveling around the world, and I just started going, I'm a bigger player. And a lot of people have that thought. Okay, they truly. Yeah. I mean, you just look at the stats in the United States. 87% of people totally disengage with their work.
Right.
There's stats that show that 83% of people live their entire lives, never locate their purpose. There's a lot of people get up and they're there physically, but they're not there mentally. They're not there spiritually. They're not there emotionally.
Why do you think that is?
They just don't believe they can do it. Truly a lack of self-belief that they can leave one thing and do another thing, right? So when I was a teacher, I would notice teachers that were miserable, And I'd say, well, why don't you just retire and do something else? And here's what they would say. Well, what else would I do?
Yeah.
I went to college to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, in any given day, you're a psychologist, you're a conflict resolution expert, you're a motivator, you're a coach. Like there's something in me, I think because of my self-development of what I was reading, that goes, I can do this. And I didn't think twice about it. Listen, when I left coaching, I walked in and said, I'm retiring. I'm resigning. And I finished that year. I said, this is going to be my last year or something like that. I coached 1 year after I won the championship because I didn't want to leave after I won a championship. And people go, well, he just left when all the great players left. My last year was actually my best coaching job.
Wow.
We went 22-10. We had a very average team. And I could say I left it all on the court, man.
Do you think anybody could sell you better than you could sell yourself?
No.
That's an important thing. And why I asked you that question, because I'm listening to you, and what you're doing is basically articulating the fact that you can sell people better than they can sell themselves. And I say that a lot of times also, and I never really realized up until this moment that that's a huge problem, that most people cannot sell themselves.
That's right. And when you think about it, I remember calling Jeremy Miner one day, and I'm like, man, I'm kind of studying the psychology of decisions. Why can't people make decisions? So I ask all these psychologists, why can't people make a damn decision, right? When it's clearly in their best interest. And a couple reasons. One, we weigh perceived loss 2 to 3 times the rate that we do perceived gain. Right? And the old adage, if I had $100 in my pocket and I said, hey, Rob, let's flip. If you win, I give you the 100. If you lose, you give me the 100. Most people wouldn't take that bad.
Right.
All right. But Miner said this. He said, Coach, 80% of people have inferiority complex. They don't believe they can do it. 20% of people have superiority complex. They believe they can do it without the help of another person. And if you're selling, you have to convince them that with you in their life, they can do it much better, right? Or faster, or they could do it if they had your help. And that's kind of his sales process where he asks these questions. And I thought that was interesting because people will see me speak, but they won't enroll in the coaching. And, I always tell people, seeing a person speak is not going to change your life. Reading a book's not going to change your life, right? It's one thing if I read your book on closing the wealth gap. It's another thing to have close proximity to you and observe and be mentored and coached by you, which is why people need to get into your academy. Because the book's not going to change their life. The book's going to open their mind. The speaking engagement's going to open the mind. It's not going to change their life.
Well, that's a great point. I know you talk a lot about Dan Sullivan and courage and all those things. And do you think maybe those are some of those? Because, that's the thing. Like you said, people... I get so fed up with some of these conferences to where I think I'm doing my last big conferences. You get because you know why is because you can get 300-400 people out of there, and it's always the same 40 to 50 or less, 20 to 30 that are going to actually do something. So now I'm at a point where it's like, hey, I want to do a podcast. I want to put out free information and give it out there to people. But I'm at a point in my life now where I want to see a little bit more commitment from people because I feel like I've done my job. I'll continue to do my job out there. But it's up to people to take that next left. And what's the difference? What needs to trigger in their mind from someone who just says, I saw Coach talking, that sounds good. They get all fired up. Then they go home and they do the same shit, which is what we know they do, versus that person who steps up to the plate. I've been that person. You've been that person where I spent money that I didn't have because I knew the bigger goal. What's the difference in those people and how do they activate that in them?
Well, I think let's go back to a Sullivan concept. He called the 4 C's. A lot of people are waiting on courage to come before they take an action. And they never do anything. I would have never built an $8 million building in downtown Nashville if I kept waiting on the courage to come, right? So the courage never comes first. Commitment to something comes first. Then there's a period of disorientation after you've committed to something that the courage actually shows up. Right? It's like, hey, I'm in. You're doing this conference. It's like you're doing this conference in the fall. It's like, hey, I'm committed. Right? Now I need the courage, and the courage starts to show up in the form of actions. And then you learn a new capability. See, that's the 3rd C. Another way of saying it is you learn a new skill. You now know something you didn't know because of the commitment you made. Okay? And because of that, you now have confidence. Those are the 4 C's, right? So because I built a building in downtown Nashville, I then learned a new It was scary, still scary to this day, right? When you wake up and you got $40,000 or $50,000 note you're paying, you got to figure out how to get people in that building. You need you got to go do it, right? I'm committed to doing it. So I've learned something, right? If I went to build one here in Cool Springs or Chattanooga or wherever, I know where's the money made. How do we do it better? What didn't work?
And each one's going to be better.
Now I got a new confidence, man. So I know I can do it. So a lot of people wait on the courage to come, and they're really more focused on the loss than the gain. There's no way I could be around a guy like you, Bradley, any of these people you've had, and not get better. Yeah. There's no way I couldn't recoup a $10,000 investment. Yeah. There's no way I can't pick up one thing that helps my future. So if you think about it like that, but they're so focused on that loss, and they'll use the psychology because the brain will go to the past. And in my world, they'll say, well, I was in this coaching program, and I didn't get anything out of it, and it didn't work. And if they say that 7 times, I'm like, maybe the problem's you, right? Because all those people don't suck that bad. Right. and I've read a bad book that I've learned something from.
Right.
I've gone to I've heard a bad speaker that I've learned something from. I've gone to a conference that I thought was average. I've learned something from, right? But I went knowing what I wanted to get. And if I come to your conference and go, man, I need to grow my financial IQ. I need to be around bigger players. I'm going to get that, no matter what price tag I pay for it.
You're probably watching this show because you're someone who's looking to learn how to invest better. You're trying to build a better business, and there's no better way to do that than to learn from the people who've already done it. You've already seen people like Charles Payne on this show from Fox Business, one of the brightest minds in investing out there. You've already seen Brad Lee. You've seen Coach Micheal Burt. You're going to be seeing people like Tim Grover on this show. But importantly, you want to meet these people in person. You want to shake their hand. You want them to know who you are. And if you want to do that, September 27th and 28th in Nashville, I'm putting together a live event for 2 days. We're going to get to learn firsthand from these people. People like Jay Yu, founder of Nanonuclear Technology, the #1 performing IPO on the NASDAQ last year. We're going to be sitting down with you guys, showing you step by step what you need to do so when you leave, you can invest better, build better businesses, and importantly, build a better life for yourself. Join us September 27th, 28th, Bulletproof Live, bulletprooflive.com. Go right now, bulletprooflive.com. Grab your seat for 2 days to change your life. How important on this path to your own success for other people, once let's just say, okay, they've kind of flipped that mental switch and they realize, hey, I can do more. I want to be more. What I would also say is it's this combination of even that you were doing really early on. You were reading all these books, you were getting that information, but you were simultaneously acting.
Yep.
You can't just be this library where you store information. I took my MBA, my last class was M&A.
Yep.
First thing I did, I got out, I put my business up for sale. Didn't sell it, but I learned so much going through that process, right? So, you know, when we think about all this right now, so they've flipped that switch, you made this transition into your own business. What are the first things that they need to do to kind of take this conceptual, okay, I'm there, to actual physical action and putting that into place?
Well, you said a right term I use a lot, which is go from mental creation into physical action. If I'm at A is my current position. This is an exercise I do. I wrote a small book on this. If I'm at A, and there's things that I don't like about where I am, which is why I always start with frustrations. These are things that bother me. I'm trying to get to B. Now, if you study the brain, when you tell the brain what you want, it goes from being lazy to activating like a supercomputer, right?
Trying to figure it out.
Then it goes looking for people, and right, which is why I do the exercise A to B every day. Every day, I'm at A. These are things I don't like about where I am. B is my ideal state, and in my ideal state, my coaching company's doing this much revenue. We're operating this profit margin, right? I'm raising capital for these funds. I coach 3 days a week. I fly private everywhere I go. I spend this much time with my kids. See where I'm going? It's very clear. Look at how clear I am in what I want. I'm telling the brain this is what we're going to do. Now, in between A and B is two things. Who? Right? It's literally people and action. It's not thinking and stalling. So what's the first physical action I could take? So, you know, if I wanted to have a greatness factory in this office complex, the first physical action I could take is to talk to someone who's here, call a broker, go see it. Those are physical actions I could take. So I always say when I don't know what to do, I do something. I never do nothing. If I want to grow my financial IQ, I go to the bookstore and I buy a book on financial IQ. I start watching podcasts. Like, you know, now that I'm in the private equity game, that was new to me. Raising capital was new to me. So what did I do? Consume hours and hours and hours of content on it. Watch the best people in the world. How do they answer the questions? Read the books. Go to the conferences. But partner with people who know how to do it, right? Like, so I got to get out of mental creation and I got to get into physical action. So a lot of people do what's called fantasizing and catastrophizing. And I think you and I are pretty similar on this. There's what's called strategic optimist and there's what's called defensive pessimist. I'm more of a defensive pessimist. I think you are, right?
Yeah.
We think of all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing. That's
Well,
who I am.
Nick Saban, defensive pessimist.
Yeah.
Belichick, defensive pessimist.
true,
Like
true.
we could sit here and go through all kinds of great people. It's not a positive or negative. It's just this is how you're wired. This is how God wired you, wired me, right? So I can walk into a room at my greatness factory and go, that's not right. Air conditioner's 1 degree off. See where I'm going? Now, it can cause us to what's called fantasize and catastrophize, which is where we see it in our mind visually. But when we don't get there fast enough, we go to negative town. And we got to be careful. Defensive pessimists, I think, do have to be careful of going to negative town. They have to guard that, right? And here's an example. My wife, Natalie, and I were staying at a resort in Phoenix. I was speaking. It was beautiful. Beautiful resort. They put us up in a beautiful room. And it was on a golf course, but it had a small window. You couldn't really see the golf course, but it had this big suite, big bath. And I walk in and I go, look at this dump. It's like, who's the moron? This is what's coming out of my mouth. Who's the moron who put that window? And she's like, what is wrong with you? This is like one of the nicest, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like she's
yeah.
sitting there going like, the way you look at this, so
Yeah.
we have to nothing positive happens in negative town. That's a sewer cycle. Starts with one negative thought, produces one negative subconscious emotion, fear, worry, doubt, insecurity, produces a negative physiological effect on the body. What that does is tighten the body, right? Now I'm playing not to lose versus playing to win. And it all started with one thought. The success cycle says it's going to be a great day, man. We're it's like our self-talk. We're highly skilled, right? We're people of interest. We're doing big things. That produces positive subconscious emotion, excitement, energy, enthusiasm. That loosens the body. Now we're playing to win versus playing not to lose, okay? And most people play not to lose versus playing to win.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you just put out there that I think is important. And I also heard you think about this as I was listening to some other interviews that you did before you came on here, and there was something that you talked about, and I'm sure I'll screw it up, but you talked about in terms of leadership, which kind of relates to this. In terms of, being passionate, enthusiastic, a lot of people tell me, like, you do well because you're really passionate about what I do. And I think, I don't know, I think you should be passionate, obviously. But where I kind of run into a struggle sometimes, and I think you did, is when you're dealing with a team, because I'll talk about that in a minute, of how did you go from, okay, Coach Burt crushing it, making $400,000 a year, to where now I got to go from trading time for money to where now how do I, the big word is scale this, and the only way you do that is to transition that into other people, processes, and things to do that for you. But one of the things in terms of leadership that I heard you talk about was you were initially, and maybe this was when you were coaching, super enthusiastic and passionate, but you were negative.
Yeah.
And you switched that to being optimistic, to where you can still get into the room, right, and demand respect and authority, and people really like you, even though you're tough on them. But talk about that a little bit, because I think in terms of leadership, and I think you probably have to start that with yourself, because if you're constantly negative with yourself, it doesn't work. But very important transitioning that to others as a coach.
My first 3 years of coaching, we won games, but we didn't win championships. And we lost a game one night. My roommate was the men's coach, and I was the women's coach. We lived in this 2-bedroom apartment. And when we lost, man, it was awful. Right? I'd be out walking around in the pouring down rain in a suit. you just lose your mind when you're a coach and you lose. And I hated losing more than I liked winning, right? Because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
And we would sit on the back porch, typically with a bottle of whiskey or something, Maker's Mark or something, and we would just replay the game over and over and over. And he would tell me his sorrows, and I would tell him mine. And I said, man, let me ask you a question. Would you be excited about playing for you? If you had to show up and play for you? And he said, I think I'd be miserable playing for me. And I said, I think I'd be miserable playing for me too. And that night, in that moment, I made a decision to change. Instead of being intense and negative, which is what I was the first 3 years, right? Motivating through fear, okay? I said, I'm going to be intense and positive. I'm going to be somebody people love to play for. In the NFL, 23% of the players said if they could play for any coach, they'd play for Pete Carroll. If you watch Pete Carroll, he's intensely positive. He's upbeat. He's having fun. He's smiling. Now, when you ask the players, is it easy to play for Pete Carroll? They say no. He has some of the highest standards of any coach you would ever meet. But he's intense and he's positive. You see the difference? Some people, the more intense they get, the more negative they become, which was me. And I didn't win during that period. I won games, but I didn't win championships. So I made this slight change, and I started watching coaches that were intense and positive. There's a guy named Randy Kaufman in West Tennessee. Players love playing for him. Super intense, real positive. And I go, I'm going to be like that dude. And so I started to shift to where the players really did want to play for me. And then I kind of carried that over to the business world. I can go negative, okay? Although I write positive books, I think I can be incredibly unreasonable. I think I can be incredibly hard to work for, which is why, my right-hand woman's former Navy intel analyst. I mean, here's a woman that's been through the Navy, tough, trained. It almost takes a person like that to work with me, because of my standards. And I'm not saying that's positive or negative. It can produce a lot of turnover. It can produce people that don't go at the pace and intensity that I want to. And that's not been easy building a company like that.
Give me an example that someone can grab onto, maybe when you're coaching or something you do in business, of being intense and negative versus intense and positive. How can you turn that around?
Well, if you're intense and negative, it's like you just can't let something go. You just harp on it and harp on it. You know what I mean? On a mistake. Like if you're in sales, it's like the numbers are not where they need to be, and you just keep getting harder and harder and harder on people, and it's not producing a result. Right? And it's like,
I've seen that.
Yeah, so it's like yelling and screaming and cussing and demeaning and whatever, it's like some people will not respond to that.
Yeah.
And what I found, Rob, that was interesting to me is the kids were tougher than the adults. You could say almost anything to a kid, right? Like my kids. I got 3 kids. I got 2 girls and a boy. You could get on them. You could like get on them hard, give them a spanking. And then the next minute they go, love you, daddy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's how tough they are. Adults will cry and pout and be mad for months and not speak to you and not look at you. So I had to adjust that because the kids really did want to try to please you.
Yeah.
They really did want to do what you asked them to. The adults was much more difficult. It's like trying to build a team in a free agent nation.
Kids in general go to school to learn and be receptive to new ideas. And you think adults think, I've already got it all figured out. So then it's more attacking them versus developing them.
It has a lot to do with fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets. It has a lot to do with what Adam Coffey calls the accidental arrogance of success. People reach a level, right? It'd be real easy for me to say, well, I've reached a level, income level. I don't need to learn anything from people, which would be foolish. Like if that guy's over there and he's got a $100 million company and I don't, why would I go, well, I'm good. But that's what people do.
It is.
Yeah. It's really hard to break through that. So what I found is when I wrote the book Flip the Switch, which became my first Wall Street Journal bestseller, I really came up with my own theory of motivation. There were 20 theories of motivation. I deconstructed those theories. I codified those theories. I basically said, am I interested in motivation or activation? And then I came out with my own theory of motivation and Flip the Switch. And I refer a lot to that. Fear is an activator, a prey drive, right?
Yeah.
But also as competition. I was interested because last night I was asking my sales team to post their numbers for this month. And my Navy person has sold $126,000 of coaching this month, which is their biggest month to date in my company. But she also outsold some of my other team members, okay? That can immediately activate the prey drive. It's like, hold on a second, she's an operations person, and she's outsold me 2-1. That the other team members will be like, I'm embarrassed. So there's 2 activators there. There's competition and there's embarrassment. I didn't have to say anything. I just said, post your sales numbers in our team link. You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
I use a lot of this psychology when I go into a company to try to activate people that have been deactivated. Competition, fear, not fear of loss, but fear of loss of opportunity. If you're used to getting leads and you're not performing those leads and I give them to him, then that can cause you to wake up, right?
Right.
In the sports world, fear of losing was a big activator.
Yeah. So, okay, I think I want to get into building these teams, as I said, but let's go back to this person who the switch just flipped.
Yep.
He decides I'm going to leave my air conditioning job or whatever it is, and I'm going to go out, instead of being an employee, I want to now either take that skill set and get some equity somewhere and build something bigger with this mindset, or I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to build something. If you're coaching that person, they've got this identifiable skill set. What I think you're really good at is helping people identify what that is, the value that it creates, and how they can impact people's lives. And then here's where people really have a challenge, though. They're good at something, their mindset's good, but at the end of the day, you could be the smartest person in the room. If you can't turn that into dollars and monetize it, you're going to be broke and back to doing what you're doing before. Where do they start? How do they get to that next level?
So there's a formula. I'm a big believer in monetization, right? For somewhere along the way, I think it was maybe when I studied under Covey and Sullivan. Those are two of the greatest minds ever. Sullivan was big on monetization. Covey was great on frameworks. And you put those two together, it's like that's a powerhouse. Well, monetization is exchange of money for value, right? It's taking a skill and solving a problem. And if money changes hands when problems are solved, then I got to be able to clearly articulate my skill set. So the formula I use with people, even specifically when I'm coaching big time people. I've got a guy right now sold a company for $200 million. He's 50 something years old, a little bit lost. Not sure where he wants to take it. I would take him through the same formula I would somebody who's selling air conditioners trying to work through it. First, we got to find your X factor. That is the primary skill you have, right? And 9 out of 10 people cannot tell me their skill.
Wow.
We do exercises to figure out what is the primary skill that you have that you're most uniquely qualified to bring to the world. We then ask the fundamental relationship, what problem could you solve with this skill, and who would pay you the most money for that skill, right? That exercise alone may be an hour, one-to-one with me. It may be, right, where I'm working through this. I'm asking hard questions, like this skill, nope, right? Then we're working on how do we package that skill. Packaging is anything the consumer can feel, touch, taste, or see, right? How do we show the world that you have this skill? This is a form of packaging, right? Your studio is a form of packaging. Your book is a form of packaging. You going on Fox is a form of packaging, in my opinion, right? You're packaging your skill. Then we need to move toward marketing of the skill. How do we deploy the skill to the world so the world knows this guy's good, right? Then we move toward monetization of the skill. So I would do the same thing with a person that's trying to figure it out as I would this guy who sold a company for $200 million. Find, package, market, monetize. Then we would look at 3 components. The skill you have, and is that a Navy SEAL skill or a baby SEAL skill, right? Is it a real skill? Then we're going to look at the exact problem we're going to solve. Then we're going to look at the vehicle. See, if you say go back in your life and rework it 17 years, I wish I had a guy like you in my life that I could come to and said, okay, here's the vehicle I'm going to choose to take my skill to the market. It's better than this one,
Right.
but you would have said to me, it's hard to scale. It's a lot of emotional tax on you. You see where I'm going?
Yeah,
It's mostly built around a key man.
Yep.
You would have kind of talked to me like, I don't know, is this the best deployment of that skill? Or would I went to 4 or 5 companies, each one paid me $1 million a piece,
Right.
got into raising capital earlier, whatever the case may be. It's like people don't think about that part until they're way on down the road.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the whole thing about this show, everything I do in my life. It's trying to take my mistakes and things that I didn't learn until 35, 40 years of age and get them to people sooner. Because just like you said, if I would have known you and I would have known 10 other people, if I would have sold this business or that 10 years earlier, I would have been worth 10 times more than I am. And it's not just about stacking dollars. It's about quality of life and how do you live the ideal quality of life that you want to live as soon as possible.
That's right.
And so that's the whole thing that I'm trying to get to here. And as I'm listening to this, like everything that you were talking about in terms of working with this 50-year-old, that you would talk with the 30-year-old AC contractor, or the things that I'm talking to my 17-year-old daughter about now today as she goes into college. Because if you go into something thinking about, well, eventually I have to think about these 4 things and how do I eventually monetize that and make money, in my opinion, you're going to think way differently.
That's right.
And so as parents, I think it's very important that, all this financial literacy and all these things that we just sit here and bitch and whine about that we don't learn, we don't know. You were reading these things at 15, and we got to start getting these people to people sooner. So I love that you're saying that. Talk to me, though. So we've got this person now. He can go through these 4 things that you just gave him, or she can go through these 4 things and kind of know how they should be going. What were some of the clear mistakes you made early on going from A to B to where you're like, hey, if I wouldn't have done this, or if I would have sought out this, that you know today that they can maybe bypass 3 to 4 years of circling their tail on mistakes?
Well, I think the fastest way to learn anything is go straight to the source of someone who's doing it and make a decision. Like if I was around coaching companies that had scaled, which I was, do I want to go that route or not go that route? Do I want to be small and boutique? Do I want to go big? Do I need a boiler room of 50 people on the phones, right? Or do I want to outsource this? It's like, to me, speed is very important through emulation, right? I've been able to be around some of the top people in the world, observe, watch, take notes, learn. And so I think some of the mistakes I made was taking way too long, showing incremental growth year over year.
Yeah.
I didn't study quantum leap thinking until the last couple of years.
Do you think that goes back to being kind of this, I forgot what you talk about in terms of being kind of like, where you're looking, what was the thing you said, where you're looking for the things that can go wrong versus what can go right? Yeah. Does it go back to that?
It could be, or it could just be thinking for way too long. Well, next year will be better than this year. There's a lot of science out there now. It's like people writing these books on the science of scaling, and 10x is easier than 2x, and quantum leap strategy, and the crux of that is pretty simple. We don't try harder; we try differently.
That's a great point. Like what you said, is 10x easier than 2x? Do you think it is, or is it the same?
Well, I think the thinking, the structure or the framework you're using, if I told you I wanted 500 members at the Greatness Factory and you said, set up your goals to have 5,000.
Yeah.
And I set it up differently, right? And somewhere along the way I got 3,000. So I think it has to do with the framework of how you're thinking. Most people think incremental. I'll grow 5%, 10% year over year. That's good. I'm growing, right? But when you're working hard over a long cycle of time, you begin to resent that. Like I worked really hard and I only made $1 million more.
Right.
Or I worked really hard and I made $250,000. But then it's like the economy was bad and we're in somewhat a recession, and you start justifying all of these things. Where I really do believe that when you get in the right vehicle, you could do more in 3 years than you could. Some of the vehicles I'm in now could move much faster in 3 years than 17 years of coaching. So it's like finding the right vehicle. I'm so fixated on this for people today.
Well, I think that's important, and I think it comes down to exposure to bigger ideas also, right? Because I think, the way I grew up, I didn't hear about a lot of these things until I was 19 or 20 years old. And no one owned a home. No one was buying stocks or any of these things. So for me, it was just kind of that prolonged period before I got the right exposure. And I had all the mindset and I believed all those things that you want, but if I didn't hear about it, I didn't know it could exist. I'm a big fisherman. I started out fishing for bluegill in the pond, right? Now I don't fish for anything except tuna in the ocean. So if someone told me you want to fish for tuna in the ocean, it's a different location, it's a different rod, it's a different skill set. You're not going to take that bluegill rod and then go out and try to find it. So it's just, if you know where you're trying to go, again, if you can learn this, why I love this podcast, why I love having you on, the idea is to get to somebody listening to this, tell them this information, set their mindset larger and bigger. The great thing today is you've got this podcast and millions of others and your books and all these information where there's literally no excuse to think small other than the fact that you just don't believe that you can do it.
Yeah, you just have self-doubt. And you talking about going, I remember the one time I went deep sea fishing. Notice I only said one time. They told me it would be fun and it was very rocky and my buddies are throwing up out of the back. And I was sitting up front with the captain with my notebook. Asking him questions about the business model. that goes to show you what kind of guy I am. It's like that was a high demand and low supply business. I sat up front with the captain and the phone rang all day. Had a little phone in the thing. It would ring and he would answer. And this was a sales pitch. It's $400 for half a day, $800 for a full day. Which one would you like? What card would you like to put it on? And he would literally just take the cards and then he'd hang it up and then ring again. And I'm watching with my notebook and I said, do you have to make any sales calls? Nope. Do you have to do anything? He said, there's more demand than there is supply. And I wrote in my notes, create products and services that are easy to sell. That was the big takeaway from my deep sea fishing.
But simple yet effective, right?
I did catch the biggest fish out there with those guys. And I'm not a fisherman. Somehow that was luck.
Okay, so someone's kind of figuring this out. I know what I'm going to do. I've kind of got the skill set. I'm going to go and launch. I think like me, I was a solopreneur first.
Yep.
And I'm a kind of big believer in, it's easy to look back and say, hey, I regret not doing this. I regret not doing that. I wish I learned that sooner. At the same time, that was my path. That was your path, coaching. Yep. If you would have looked back objectively, maybe you could say, hey, maybe I should have left 3 or 4 years younger. Yep. However, like, first of all, there's no excuse dwelling on the past, number one. But number two, in my view, like you said, kind of God puts things in your hands and in front of you at the point in time where you're ready to capitalize it. I'm a big believer in. I know you are a big believer in that also. Okay. So for somebody today that's looking at that, I like starting as a solopreneur. Why? Because I also am a believer of, if you're going to get into something, the more you intrinsically know about that, every aspect of that, the less opportunity there is for someone to sell you a bill of goods, for you to get taken advantage of. And so if you really know your business, it's a lot easier. For me in finance, you can't bullshit me on compliance or trading. I know all of it because I was a solopreneur first, where I literally did all of it. So I like that idea of being a solopreneur. However, you do come to that fork in the road where I talked about, and I work on businesses that need to scale, to where I tell people, and I really believe I made my first $1 million at 30. I believe a lot of people could you don't have to be strategic. You don't have to worry about scaling. If you have the work ethic that you do and mindset, and you bust your ass on a great skill set, you can hit $1 million. I did it early at 30, but at 33, I was at $1 million. At 34, I realized I hit that proverbial glass ceiling where I needed to do something different. That's when I went back into grad school and said, okay, because at that time there really wasn't as much YouTube. I figured, okay, I've got to understand what this scaling really is. And what you learn is you're basically taking that skill set and you're transitioning it to other people, to technologies, to be able to do it when you're sleeping and without you on great mass. How, in your view, how do people do that? How did you do that? Because I think you're doing it now. It is very difficult when you have, like you said, you have personality, I have a personality, and really, especially in, which I think more and more companies are becoming personal brand businesses that have a huge team around them, even though it's a personal brand. Your culture is so important. So how are you able to transfer that to other people to where you're able to build and monetize these businesses up to a point you have now?
Well, it's interesting. I went back and watched the Jobs movie that Ashton Kutcher was in yesterday. Okay. First thing Jobs did was he went and found Wozniak, right? He was great at certain things. Wozniak he really went and found his who.
Right.
And if he didn't, and you'll see this a lot. So it's like, I am acutely aware of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I'm a great coach. I'm not a great manager of people. I don't enjoy managing people, right? I don't even know that I'm a great builder. I'm a great coach, a great developer of talent. I've even had people tell me, I love you as my coach, I hate you as my boss. But I'm aware of that. So one of the things you said there I want to accentuate is when you know your skill, that skill can then be used in multiple ways. I do not change the skill no matter what platform I go into. When I figured out that my primary skill was activation, I can activate a boldness. I can activate imagination. I could activate a brand, right? See, now I have people coming to me saying, I want you to activate my brand and for a percentage of equity. Well, I'm just bringing my know-how of packaging and movement and energy to a coffee company or to this, right? It's the same skill used in a different way. When I'm raising capital, right? I've raised about $30 million in the last year. Same skill. I'm activating people. Then I give it a concept. Okay, what's a concept that I could talk about that would open people up? And I go through all these concepts, and I spend a lot of time thinking and talking and testing. And then I go, the big table. That's a concept that I could use that gets people open to doing bigger things, right?
And what's the big table?
The big table is the biggest opportunity available to you that you're not focused on. It's highly profitable. It's highly enjoyable. It's highly meaningful. There's a return on your energy. There's a return on your investment. There's a return on your objective. It is literally the biggest game in business that you can play, right? Like you taking your company to all these other things, right? And putting them all into one company where you can do this and this and this. To me, that's a bigger table move, right? Versus just doing one thing. For me, maybe building more greatness factors could be big table. Me raising capital is big table. Me getting a piece of equity or exits is big table. So the big table concept gets you thinking bigger. But here's the important part I want the listeners to get. I don't change my skill. Once I knew that my primary skill was the activation of something, right? People, brands, businesses, wealth. Then I just go, okay, where can I take this skill? what vehicle can I take this skill to? That's really the important part of this equation for anybody that's watching this.
Well, and I think that's important. I think with artificial intelligence and everything that's happening today, I believe the demand for what you're talking about, a highly unique, specialized skill that you have the ability to impact people's lives greater, faster than anyone else, is going to become more rewarding. And the people that are just staying there stuck in average in the middle, I'm really worried about them, because I think technology is going to do it much better. So when you're saying all this, I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, this is my skill set. I understand what coach is telling me to do. I think one of the hardest things out there for people, though, is you talk about this big table concept. How do you get a seat at that big table? Right? People ask me all the time, like, how did you work with those types of clients? And I've got my story, but what are you coaching people on when they ask you, okay, I'm really good, but no one knows about me and I can't get in these rooms. What do they need to do?
Well, one thing I figured out very quickly from transitioning from being a basketball coach was that skill recognizes skill.
Yeah.
It's like the first time you saw me speak or I saw you speak, we can recognize it. So the formula to becoming a person of interest is really 4 things, in my opinion, right? You got a clear message. My message right now is everybody deserves a seat at a bigger table. You're highly talented, yet you're undercapitalized, right? You're a level 10 person stuck in a level 4 vehicle. And I will say that message over and over and over. And that attracts people in who go, man, I got that pain point. He's talking to me, okay? They've got a big mission, and the mission needs to be big enough that other people can fit inside of it, right? It's like, I want to do this. I want to help this. I want to, right? I got a big mission. Third piece is a lot of movement. And I kind of teach people how to move and circulate, how to open doors, how to get in key strategic partnerships with people. And then we move all of that to the 4th piece, which is monetization. So what can you do? If you read the book Person of Interest, which is the smallest book I've ever written, that's sold probably more copies than any book I've ever written, it kind of goes through these ingredients: specific knowledge, impeccable skill, big prey drive, confidence that converts to boldness, energy, right? Impression of increase. These are characteristics of people of interest. And when I wrote that book, I was just a little baby person of interest. I was a little baby star, but I studied top people and I codify and package concepts. And I'm like, this is what people of interest have. I can get those things. And I started to do that. But I watch how people come up to me at conferences, from everything from their dress to how they communicate. Do they give or take? You see the same thing? It's like, do they want something from me? Or they like their general disposition, their energy? There's very basic things they need to work on to get close to influential people, right? And what we do when we get around powerful people is we kind of have a need to tell them how great we are, right? Like I remember when I was negotiating the deal with Tony Giarratana, who's the biggest developer in Nashville, and he's probably $1 billion guy. For some reason, I just had to tell him that I had an airplane. And I'm like, I got this jet. And then I felt so stupid. I'm like, he's like, okay. It was one of those.
We've all done it.
It just came out. And I felt so stupid. Like he didn't care and I didn't need to tell him. And it just lowered my status, if anything. The fact, but it's like I make those mistakes sometimes too, man. You just have this desire to puff up and tell people how great you are. And that's a big mistake that people make.
Yeah, I agree. And so what were you able to do personally? What would you recommend to kind of get in those rooms? Like you said, when I saw you speak, okay, this guy's different. He's someone that I want to talk to. So, I mean, the obvious answer there is become really great at something. But what else should they be doing?
I think you also need to begin to package your intellectual property.
Yeah. And talk about that, because I think that's the hardest thing, right? There are people who are really good. They're articulate. They get on stage. They're impactful. And then someone comes up to and asks them, like, how do I work? They don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know how to charge. They've never been.
Where there's no invitation, there's no monetization.
Right.
In our world, we actually start with the offer and we go, how could people engage with us? Like today I say, I can coach and mentor you. I could strategically partner with you, although I only strategically partner with people typically I've coached and mentored,
right,
or have high status. Number 3, you could invest with me in these ways, or you could use some of the physical assets that I've created, Greatness Factory Lodge. Those are the 4 ways to work with Coach Burt.
How long did it take you to get there to where you could say that as cohesively as you just did, and it all makes sense?
I tell you what helped me more than anything is when I started doing virtual events during COVID, I got a lot of coaching on the offer. How do you invite people to something? Nobody wants to be pitched.
Right.
We don't pitch. We invite. We offer. We extend an invitation. If you want to go deeper, if you want to go toward mastery, if you want to learn something that's taken me 34 years to learn, right? Step over here. It's different than being pitched, because we've seen that, and we don't want that. So I learned it during COVID when I had to pivot toward virtual events, and I started getting real high-level coaching and how to make offers, because those offers and those things were like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It was grueling, Rob. I'm talking, you have to seed, and then you have to embed, and then you have to get the mind open, and then you have to get them thinking, and then you have to explain it, and then you have to rework it. I mean, I would be sweating.
Yeah. We're in person. It's a lot easier to connect.
I would be like sweating when it was over like that. I just so I started saying, where there's no invitation, there's no monetization. But let's go back to the intellectual property. When I wanted to meet with Dr. Price Pritchett, who wrote Quantum Leap Strategy, I sent him an email to his office, said, I'm going to be in Fort Worth, Texas. I'd love to come to your office to meet. It'd be no different than me wanting to meet you.
Yeah.
I don't know you.
Yeah.
First thing you're going to do is go look me up.
Yeah, right.
Right? If you see that I've written 22 books, I've got an $8 million complex in downtown Nashville, I'm speaking all over the world, I've been endorsed by all these people, right? You're going to go, I need to take this meeting.
You're right.
But because of the body of work, the books, the podcast, the intellectual property, a person can really do their due diligence on you, right? And so when you're trying to get noticed in the world, that's why I coach all my people to write their books, to become known in the world, to practice the formula of the person of interest. The more the person of interest score is, the more opportunity you're going to get, right? So that's where I really tell people. And everybody's done something, right? Everybody's done something. They don't believe that they've done a lot, but I force them to go back to their past. I'm really paying you for your past. Your past helps me to build my future. But I don't know what that past is. Like, I wouldn't know you've been in mergers and acquisitions until you tell me.
Yeah.
When you write a book, when you do podcasts, when you go on television, whatever the case may be, that allows me to see, and my brain to go, okay, I can trust this dude.
Yeah, it's an important part, I think, and that's how people become an overnight success after 10 years of seeding Google and all these other things. And I think that's really important because, also I've been working with high net worth people for 20 years, billionaires and people who are extremely wealthy. And I can't say you can just put your thumb on, here's exactly what it is. But what they tend to do is, first of all, they're very guarded. And the reason is their time has become their most valuable asset. And they're already taking enough time from their family and other things that are more important than answering your question. They don't want their brain picked. They don't want a free lunch. They don't want any of that stuff. So what you said is, and I think is also the key, is more than likely, like it or not, they're going to Google you, or their assistant's going to Google you. And if there's nothing about you, click to the next one, right? If there's anything negative about you out there, that's going to even be worse. It's going to be almost a net no-go. But if they see consistency, right, and that's one thing I always looked at is, I always looked at the long game, right? I said, the first 10 years, I didn't know what I was doing. No one knew how it was. But I wrote books. I was on television. I was getting degree after degree. I was working with people that I was getting rid of in the paper. So now if somebody Googles me, there's literally 10 to 15 pages of, okay, there's at least some credibility there where I'm going to give this guy an opportunity to open the door. So I think that's important. Let me ask you this. In terms of hitting that next level of success where you're at today, how important are the right relationships and being able to break through that wall, even if you've got a great product to offer?
Everything. When I try to deconstruct a quantum leap, which is a significant jump, the best I could come up with was, because it typically happens easily with no rhyme or reason, like if you study particles and how it jumps, and it does it with ease. And the truth is, as best I can tell, it comes down to two things. You meet a new person that brings you new knowledge that you didn't have, right? Or you meet a person, they introduce you to a new group of people. When I look at the significant spikes in my business, it was because I was coaching a major influential person. And they had a downline of 10,000 people. And they said, I want you to coach all of my people. Right? Now, one person has introduced me to 10,000 people. And it's like, now the business spikes. So it's like when you're trying to manufacture a quantum leap, you don't actually know where it's going to come from. It's like this, I met a relationship with this guy and we did this and it like blew up and exploded, right? And that's how I think it happens. So relationships at the end of the day is everything. And if you really watch how big time people build relationships, pour into relationships, engage with people, That's why they do it, because that's where the opportunity is. And being open. Listen, having the psychological flexibility. Some of the things I'm doing today, if you would have came to me 3 years ago and said you're going to be doing these things, I would be like, what? No, I'm not interested in that. So I read a book called Lucky You, which is how to psychologically drive up the probability of luck. It's very simple. You're open. You circulate. You get in the right rooms. You be around the right people. Like, it's literally that.
And luck happens.
And good things happen to you. Yeah.
So, my audience, which I've defined over time, and I've transitioned. Like, I used to only work with high net worth people, right? And I sold my business, and I said, okay, I want to give people more access to what the ultra wealthy are doing, because I believe, just like you, that anyone can do it. It's just a lack of knowledge and information.
Right.
The American capitalist, as I know, because I'm living proof capitalism works if you know how to participate in it. Most people don't know how to participate. And so my audience has to, and I first thought it's everybody, because everyone wants this. And then I quickly realized it's not everybody. It's everybody who's already flipped their switch to the mindset that they can believe. I'm not in the job of convincing you that you can do it, but once you've done that, I want to start you out on that path. And that's why you're here. And I think you provided a lot of great information for starting out on this path. But I also have billionaires who listen to me because who I am today. So I want to kind of go up the ladder a little bit. And you talked about this idea of relationships. I also believe, I always say, everything good that's happened to me is because of a relationship. Everything bad that's happened to me in my life is because of a relationship. And so they're extremely important. However, I think where I'm at today, I think where you're at today, and where a lot of other people are, and where my audience is heading, you're going to run into that point where relationships become kind of a double-edged sword. Having a platform, which we're all trying to have a bigger platform, which is why I do what I do and you do what you do, is because we believe we have something to offer that's going to impact people's lives, so more people need to know about that. The challenge then becomes, and I still haven't figured this out personally, so I want to see how you're dealing with this, is I'm one of these people where I get asked to be on podcasts or go on stages, or I've had people say I want to come on this show, and I don't philosophically align with what I think they're doing. And let me talk about that. Like, I'm not Jesus. I'm not here to pass judgment on people. However, I think there's two types of people in this business and these days of social media. I think there are people who, like you, and which is why you're here, have real value to offer. And you create products and services that, if people put in the work, can reap those rewards of that. And so everything you do is with that intention. Does that mean I do the same thing, that they're going to become an overnight success? Absolutely not. Does it mean that they're going to become successful at all? Absolutely not. But you go into creating products and services believing, because you've done it and you've proven that other people can do it, that will work. I do believe that there are people who think a little bit differently like that. They feel like they've got a great skill set. They've got a great social media brand. They know how to sell really good. They've got a silver tongue, which most people don't. And they create things that are beneficial to them, but are a dead end to most people. And I think I'm pretty good at identifying that sometimes. And so even though these people might have huge platforms, I refuse to go down that. And that I can tell you will hold me back, but that's okay. I'd rather be worth 100 million than I would 10 billion doing it the wrong way. How do you look at that?
Well, being in this space and speaking around the country and seeing almost everybody, I think I can tell who's the same person on stage as they are off stage. Same people who are creating real products and services. Same people who have a demonstrated capacity. And what I look at in a person is a demonstrated capacity. Do they really have a demonstrated capacity to do this? Now, is there some value from seeing something or learning something from somebody that I don't, I may not philosophically align with? Yes. I've done events with certain people that I go, I'm never doing that again. It's like, because I think all conflict happens when two people do not believe the same things. Okay? And so I'm trying to say no to things that don't align with what I believe. And a guy is actually Kevin Elko, which was Nick Saban's psychologist for many years, said to me one day, he said, you do know you ain't got to do those things. Like, there's enough people that align with you and you align with them that you don't have to do things just for the money or because it's a big name or somebody, you know what I'm saying? Because early in my career, it's like, hey, it's a big opportunity. I need to take it. And then I would do events, and it almost didn't matter who I did the events with. People would have a problem with it. And they'd say, well, I can't believe you did an event with that person, and I thought you were this. And And I understood. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
we don't seem to align,
Yeah.
right? But then that was kind of the end of the relationship. We did an event, there was nothing else, right? Then I met people along the way that I go, man, we should do something together, right? When I met you, I go, hey, let's do something together at some point. So it's like, I'm kind of at the point where you are today. I'm not going to do things just for the sake of doing them because it's going to build a brand, it's going to make money. I try to provide real value. I am a real coach. I still coach people. I still call people every day.
Yeah.
I still prospect. I still make 35 to 57 touches a day, every day, right? I still follow up with people. You could still call my office and say, I want to speak to Coach Burt, and I will call you. So it's like, that's me. That's who I am as a person. But when you really look at what you believe, if I believe in coming in early and staying late, and you believe in showing up late and leaving early, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
If I believe in when a man asks you to go 1 mile, you go 2, and you go half a mile, we're going to have a problem. And so I do think it's about philosophically aligning. That's why when people go to conferences and they see all these great speakers, they really need to say, who is the most qualified person that I philosophically align with? And we have similar beliefs, and that's who I want to work with.
No, yeah, I agree. And that's what one thing going back to conferences, I feel like, especially when you're at the level you're at, a lot of people listening to this are at that high level. They might think, well, I really can't get anything from that. I'm still learning. It's just, when I go to a conference now, it might be for one speaker because there's some specific piece of knowledge that he's going to give me. It only might be 1/8 of his speech that he's going to give. But because where I'm at today, that 1/8% of knowledge from that 30 minutes is going to be worth millions and millions of dollars. So that strategy and strategically aligning with people, like you just said, I think is super important for people.
Well, I paid $7,000 once to go to a Tony Robbins event in LA. I took a guy on my team with me. And after 7 minutes, I told the guy with me, I said, we can go now.
Yeah.
And he said, what? It's 4 days. I said, I wanted to see how he put 10,000 people in a room.
Right.
I wanted to see the energy. I wanted to see the music. I wanted to see, right? Like, I came here to learn one thing, and I learned it in the first 7 minutes. Now, we went to the conference. We stayed. We didn't stay the whole time. Tony only taught on certain days. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember going to see Rick Pitino coach in Nashville. The Boston Celtics did an exhibition game in Nashville at Bridgestone Arena. And just watching Pitino walk in was worth the money. With the suit, with the $5,000, $10,000 suit. And when Rick Pitino walked in, the whole audience stood up just to see him walk in. That's back when he was in his prime. Right now he's at St. John's and he's doing it again. But as a young coach, like, just to see him walk in with that kind of confidence 1 minute before the game. When I met Covey, it was like just to spend a few minutes with Covey. When I flew to Puerto Rico to meet Wayne Dyer, to be in their presence for a few minutes, right? Just being around them, that was valuable for me. So when I go to a conference, I may go, I didn't like that. That wasn't any good. But it's like something I see, man, I like this. I like this. That's good. So I kind of go into it with that frame that I'm going to pick up something that can help me. I can learn anything from anybody, anywhere, at any time. And I remain humble and coachable.
What's the biggest mistake you've made so far in your journey? When I say mistake, maybe learning lesson that you've been able to implement and make a major shift to the upside in your business? Probably
big mistakes have been trusting too early, getting into bad partnerships. Obviously that's cost me millions of dollars. I'm getting better at that, moving slower, right? That's been big. Staying small was a big mistake. I've kind of always taken the approach that we're a boutique, specialized firm, that really specializes in this versus going bigger. And so I think those are two big ones that I've made.
How do you, because my biggest mistake is, I still battle it, is I feel like I don't take enough risk. And I think that maybe comes, I started as a risk analyst in my business, so I look at everything that can go wrong. But also my reputation was so important to me, to where if I lose money myself, whatever, I'll figure it out. But I never wanted to lose another dollar for somebody else. How do you, because your business is very high reliant on your brand, right, and credibility, how do you analyze things today to decide, what will I do? What won't I do?
Well, this is a benefit of me having this, former Navy intel analyst on my team who is by nature a very defensive pessimist. I can get ready to jump into something and she will say to me, you hadn't asked the hard questions, right? You haven't asked the hard questions. And I'm even seeing that with partnerships. Like there's questions I haven't asked about people's health.
Right.
And they're a key person in the deal. They have all the specialized knowledge. There's key questions I may not have asked about this. And you know, she's kind of teaching me, you haven't analyzed this deep enough, right? And sometimes that can be irritating to a guy like me who runs.
Want to move, right?
And I'm like, look, I've made millions of dollars by running and going. And I'm going to win some and I'm going to lose some. But the truth is, when you get in real high stakes things, right, it is good to do that risk analysis. It is good to talk about those things. So I think that, and then the other thing, you know, I did have one regret I do have is when the business was young, I was on the road a lot. And I didn't, my oldest daughter now is 13. She just turned 13. And, you know, I didn't feel like I was really there like I should have been. I've been a much better dad on number 2 and number 3. As I've just matured and said, hey, no. Because on the come up, Rob, it was like, you tell me that the answer is yes. Now tell me what the question is.
But, you know, and I think it's one of those things that I could say the same thing. I've got a 17-year-old daughter and I've got a 1.5-year-old son. So it's easy, I think, to get down on yourself and say, I wish this or I wish that. But the truth is, the lifestyle and some of the opportunities that we've been able to crave for that wouldn't be there. So it's a balance. I wouldn't be too hard on yourself.
It is, and I remind her of that. And you know, but you know that I think when you're all in, my personality is I'm all in, man. I'm 100% committed, and whatever that takes, late nights, early mornings, and when you come from the coaching world, we would get in at 6:30, we'd go home at midnight. That was our life. Now, what did that produce? Being the best.
Yeah, exactly.
And is there some collateral damage along the way? You know, because it was such a big goal to be there, probably. You know, but you know, it is what it is.
Well, that's what I love about you, man. I think first of all, I think everything that you do with the outcome of trying to help and improve people. That's why I'm behind you. That's why you're here today. Everything that you've done with the Greatness Factory, the risk that I've seen when you first came to take me, like what I like about you also is you make shit happen. And then, hey, if something goes wrong, let's figure it out and move from there. That's what being an entrepreneur really is. What's next for Coach Burt? Where do you go from here? What's the next thing for you?
You know, I have this desire to build more greatness factories. You know, I don't know exactly how we're going to do that. You and I have talked about a lot of different models we could go. I'm enjoying raising capital for various things. I'm enjoying getting over to the private equity game and just getting a seat at a bigger table. It's fun. I have a deep love for real estate, the aesthetics of real estate, and coaching at those places. So, you know, I think you're going to see me continue to coach people on how to do things at a big table, but also show people while I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm very confident that you're going to build more, bigger, better, and you could help a lot of other people get there. So hopefully we could have you back sometime.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for sharing this knowledge with my audience, and keep crushing it, man. We'll see you next time.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks.